Hello, hello, hello. My name is Rhyana Ebanks-Babb, and we are here on Black Mental Health Matters. We're going to be talking about PMDD, Premenstrual Dysphoria Disorder. Now, this is something that I had such a great pleasure of researching, particularly whilst finding out a bit more about this subject through our guest that we'll be having today. Her name is Brandlyn Owens. And in all honesty, I'm so excited to get into this discussion. So I'm going to bring her forward. But just a little bit about myself. I am based here in the UK. I consider myself a mental health practitioner, whereby I support people through various different strides in their life and overcoming many obstacles to triumph and thrive over their mental health battles and struggles. I'm also a mentor to students and young people, and I work within health and social care within the UK health and social care system. So I'm excited to have this discussion today with Brandlyn to discuss PMDD. And we're going to be giving you some stats and facts as well as some personal experiences. And yeah, I hope that whoever watches this takes some nuggets of knowledge and the discussion resonates with you. Please remember to like, share, subscribe to our YouTube channel, share with friends and family and whoever you feel may benefit from this discussion. And I will bring forward Brandlyn now. So, welcome, Brandlyn. How are you? How are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. How are you?
I am well, thank you. I'm very excited, as I was just saying to our viewers, that I'm excited to get into this discussion with you. Through when this show was allocated to me, I'd done a little bit of research, but as we spoke throughout the weeks preparing for this, it really opened up my eyes to how much I didn't know. So yeah, it's exciting to learn a bit more as well as hear from you firsthand experiences of what PMDD is like, living with PMD in all honesty. So as we delve into this discussion, please feel free to introduce yourself to our listeners and our viewers and tell them a bit about yourself.
I would love to. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. I feel honored to remove the mask and really share about this topic today. I am Brandlyn. I currently reside in North Carolina. I was born and raised in a small beach town, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. I am a graduate of Winston-Salem State University and North Carolina Central University, mom of two, and
Mhm.
a mental health advocate.
Lovely, lovely. All about advocacy over here as well, definitely. So thank you for that lovely introduction. Um, so I think let's delve right in because, in all honesty, this discussion is one that I've kind of been excited to have for a long time.
Hmm.
And I think it's really poignant for us to tell the viewers why you decided to appear on this show. So, could you tell us a bit about why you decided to speak on this topic?
I think it's important for women, especially young women,
Hmm.
before they, have got that very first job, before that first home purchase, that they actually know that sometimes it doesn't just stop at PMS.
Mm,
There's something more severe than PMS, and it's
mm,
real, and it's okay to talk about it,
mm.
and it's not going to always be easy. But I figure if I come on and I talk about it and I share the raw truth from my perspective, that it'll reach someone
Mm.
and they'll reach someone and then they can teach someone.
Yes, each one teach one, as they say.
Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you. And you mentioned PMS, and it's very true that PMDD is very different to PMS. So, first of all, Can I ask you, what would you describe PMDD to be, and what's the difference to PMS?
For me, when I hear PMS and when I was saying, I have PMS, I considered the backache because there's physical and emotional components to
Mhm,
PMS and PMDD. So physically, I would be nauseous. Um, I, I would vomit when my period was on. My back would hurt. My breast would hurt. I would have headaches.
mhm,
But then it would stop and it would go away. A couple days before it started, I would get a little cranky and I didn't know why. Oh, but then
mm,
PMS. But PMDD is um heavy, heavy on the emotional part of PMS. It's
mhm,
like a more severe form of PMS.
mhm,
It lasts much longer, whereas some PMS symptoms um, may last maybe 3 to 5 days. PMDD symptoms can last 7 up to 10, 12 days.
mm,
So it's like PMS on steroids.
mm,
It's pumped up and it's ready to attack.
mm. That's an interesting way of putting it. A very interesting
Mhm.
way of putting it, because I think many can relate to that in respect of many women, experience PMS, but explaining it like PMS, but a more severe and chronic
Yes.
and painful experience.
Mhm.
I think many women would be able to identify with that a bit more, rather than just, the acronym or just a
Yeah.
medical term.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you. And in your opinion, why do you think the condition isn't as well known as PMS?
Um, I personally think that it starts with education. It's
Hmm.
outdated.
Hmm.
I was an educator in public schools for 10 years. I
Mm,
think that the terminology um, that is still being used and still being taught is just PMS.
mm,
So I don't think it's prevalent, one, because no one's actually talking about it. It's
mm,
not in textbooks. And I was a librarian, so
mm,
um, I know the book ordering process. I know what books are offered. I mean, I know how to search these things up, but a lot of the what you would how kids would be exposed and how educators would be exposed to even know something has changed. I
mhm,
think that would help. Um, Definitely. Yeah.
mm. And some of the information that I came across when doing some research for this is that PMDD can begin at any time during a reproductive life cycle. And for some people, it does begin at the onset of puberty. But for others, it might be more evident during perimenopause or menopausal symptoms. So that's why I strongly agree with you where you say that young women need to know about this at the very beginning of them becoming an adult, or when they're starting to menstruate, is very
Yeah.
important for them to know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as an educator, I mean, I taught 6 classes a day, kindergarten through 5th grade,
Hmm.
and I would have a second grader who had started menstruating,
Mm,
a third grader, and a fifth grader, all in the
mm,
same day. And I'm like, oh my gosh, poor baby.
mm.
And what I'm thinking in my head is PMS or PMDD. Like, which one is this
Yeah,
child going to have to deal with? And what if their parents don't know? That what if
yeah.
the child doesn't have the language to explain to his or her guardian
Mm,
that, I'm feeling like this, and I'm feeling like that, or this isn't feel. How does an 8-year-old,
Mm.
who's starting puberty, that's
Mm.
what the stats and the facts say.
Yep.
PMDD, it doesn't have an age. It
Yeah.
just says at the onset.
Mm.
So according to that, a 8 or 9-year-old can experience PMDD.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
that's scary.
Yeah, definitely. And I know we're going to get into misdiagnosis a little later on in our discussion, but even just down to you giving that shocking age of 8-year-olds experiencing PMDD or could potentially experience PMDD, it can also be relevant to misdiagnosis of a behavioral or a different emotional disorder. But we'll get into
Yes.
misdiagnosis and that kind of discussion a bit later. But I just wanted to find out a bit more because I know we're here to speak about your own personal experience as well. So tell us a bit about when you realized within yourself that there was an issue, that things didn't feel so right.
Well, I've always been really outgoing. Um, Definitely not an introvert, I would say.
Hmm.
I wouldn't say full on extrovert, but I'm definitely not an introvert.
Yeah.
Um, and I really value my friendships and my family.
Hmm.
So when a friend or a family member says, "Hey, why did you have to say it like that?"
Mm.
Or are you okay? Or are
Mm.
you having a good day today? But it became a pattern, and I
Yeah.
had to say, well, is what's going on? Because every now and again, the people closest to me who know that I will not take offense at all
Mm.
are repeat saying the same things over again. Hey, that was hurtful.
Mm.
Hey, did you mean it like that? You couldn't have meant it like that. And
Mm.
I noticed that in my early 20s, early 20s. So
Right.
I'm like,
Okay.
I'm writing. I love researching. I love factual stuff.
Hmm.
I'm up. So I'm start a little journal. Let me
Mm.
try and figure out what's going on. And lo and behold, it is like a week and a half before I begin menstruating. So
Okay.
it's like 10 days out.
Mm.
And I'm like, hold up, wait a minute. So I got an attitude. I got attitude problem
Mm.
10 days before the
Mm.
period starts. Oh, and I'm one of those in the unfortunate situation that I am in. It stays on for 7 whole days.
Uh,
So my
yeah, I'm there as
PMS,
well.
yeah, my PMS, 10 days, I can't sleep, back hurting,
Mm.
migraines that last for days,
Mm.
mood swings, depressed,
Mm.
um, feelings of loneliness. I mean, just absolute. But then it has to continue for
Mm.
7 more days. But
During.
there are only 30 to 31 days in every month. So you're telling me PMDD had me
Yeah.
in different spaces in different places, not realizing what's going on for 17 days out of
Mm.
every month. Yeah, so I kept a journal, and I brought all the evidence to a doctor by
Mhm.
the time I was like 22 because
Mhm.
I knew something. This is not PMS. Like something else is wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was the experience like for you once you had collated all your evidence and you went to the doctor? Obviously, I'm assuming to seek some sort of help or diagnosis. What was that experience like for you?
Um, it was it was actually a really strange experience, this particular physician. Because I got good news. Hey, it's not PMS. Thank you for bringing this information in, but it is something more severe. It's
Mm-hmm.
called PMDD.
Mm.
But as as he was explaining what PMDD was, and he's like, "Oh, and that's called anxiety. Those fears." And I'm looking through your journal. He said, "Oh, that's anxiety. That happens when patients who are diagnosed with PMDD." And he was like, "You were didn't couldn't understand why something agitated you, and it doesn't normally agitate you. This is PMDD." So he did a really good job explaining everything to me. It
Mm-hmm.
was wonderful, but also in the same appointment, he tells me, because of my fibroids, I need to, if I want to bear children, have them by the time I'm 24, or I won't be able to.
Oh
And
wow.
I was like, okay, all right, so I'm in college to be a librarian. Okay, time to go do some research. So that appointment was strange. It was
Mm.
encouraging that I collected the evidence and he was able to determine that, hey, it's not PMS, it's PMDD. But
Mm-hmm.
then there was a challenge to me possibly reproducing. So
Mm.
it was good and strange all at the same time.
Yeah, I can imagine. The It's literally like juxtaposing emotions because yeah,
Yeah,
on one hand you're very elated, but at the other hand, yeah, it can be quite daunting, I guess,
yeah,
and especially
yeah.
if you don't have children at that time.
Yeah,
Um,
I did not.
Now
Mhm.
feeling like you've got a time limit, so to speak, must have been
Yeah,
quite difficult for you.
yeah. It was strange. It was I the first time I tried to use radical acceptance.
Mm,
That was the first time I actually really tried. I'm like, okay, so it is what it is. I have to accept it for what it is, and
mhm,
I can't change it. I have no control over it.
mm,
And I just try to accept, this person, this professional who did this, maybe he's right. If he's right, he's right. So I tried to play it down,
mhm,
um, and just, but it just wasn't sitting right, and he wasn't right.
mm,
I have two healthy children
mhm.
that I didn't have until like 9 years after that. Anyway,
Well, congratulations that you
yeah,
defied the status quo.
yeah, I did. I did. I did.
Yes, wonderful, wonderful. Um, so you mentioned just now about your doctor going through the symptoms within your journal and kind of highlighting what was depression, what was anxiety, what was PMDD. And I know during our discussions, we've spoken a bit about comorbidity. Those of you that don't know, comorbidity is when you have one specific condition that is aligned and runs concurrently with another condition. So we've mentioned about yourself being also diagnosed with depression and anxiety, but also PMDD. So tell me a bit about how you decipher the conditions, if at all, if you can.
You know what? I can tell when I'm not balanced.
Hmm.
Um, and I can easily identify now um PMDD when she shows her head.
Hmm.
Um, the only thing I need to do is like glance at the calendar or
Yeah.
pull up this application that I use on my phone,
Hmm.
because because I'm so balanced, and I've everything I do in my lifestyle now works.
Mm,
So when PMDD rears her head, for me, it's not hard to decipher
mm.
because I pull up my app, and if it's within the window of my start date of my cycle, I'm like, okay, this is
Right.
happening because of this. Has nothing to do with my ADHD. I do have ADHD. I wasn't
Mhm.
diagnosed until I was a full grown adult
Mhm.
with children.
Mm.
PMDD, anxiety disorder, and major depressive disorder. So,
Mhm.
guess what? I just try to find balance. I
Mm.
don't try to distinguish which illness is showing its head. But
Mhm.
if I need to, I would, but I don't really think in those terms. I never have. But
Mm.
PMDD is so distinct. It's so different because it's so sudden. It
Mm.
doesn't build. It's like you're jolted. Like it's yeah, it's
Okay.
definitely PMS on steroids.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. Okay. And what do you think the impact is of your PMDD symptoms on your other mental health conditions that you've mentioned and your ADHD diagnosis?
Um, it keeps me on my toes. It keeps me on my toes. I like to journal and write anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So what I do is I keep a detailed journal, like a mood tracker,
Mm-hmm.
um, that's actually connected to the tracking app for my cycles. And I just track everything.
Mm.
And I can usually tell and get in front of things before, I look at my calendar. I'm like, oh, I'm going to be a little heavy on, Wednesday through Friday. So if
Mm.
I don't want to be anxious and if I don't want to feel overwhelmed, what
Mm.
can I do to alleviate Wednesday through Friday
Mm.
being the hell that it looks like? So I'm proactive. I'm really proactive, and I try to get in front of things so everything's managed.
Mm. Nice. It sounds like you've got a good hold on it. And I know that particularly when doing the research, it can be very difficult for women to be able to understand or track. And especially when they haven't got a diagnosis as well, it
And
can
it
take a
doesn't,
bit.
yeah,
So,
I'm sorry. Yeah, and it doesn't mean just because I know it's coming and I know what it is and I know it's inevitable that it's not disruptive.
mm,
Oh,
mm,
it's quite disruptive.
mm,
Um, I- being m- more exhausted, trying
mm,
to work a 10-hour day,
mm,
and be a parent to a first and second grader.
mm,
I'm extremely tired. Things hurt. I have to use more sticky notes, more calendar reminders.
mm,
When PMDD shows her head, I have to do extra stuff um, to help things stay balanced.
mm.
Um, but yeah, but it's really great that I actually know when it's coming. But there's some work to do. Yeah.
Yeah. But I guess having the diagnosis has helped, I guess,
Hmm.
because yeah, like I was saying, when doing this research, a lot of people don't get diagnosed at least from an average of 12 years, it says. There was a statistic that I read in, it's called Vicious Cycle PMDD, and
Hmm.
it mentioned that patients wait an average of 12 years for an accurate diagnosis of PMDD. So inevitably that's 12 years of misdiagnosis before an actual PMD diagnosis.
Hmm. Hmm. I
Um,
believe
what's
it.
what's your thoughts
Medical
on
medical gaslighting.
that? Yeah, yeah. We'll
Yeah,
get to that bit as well because when you was
that's
telling me
my
about your
thought on
story,
that.
Oh.
That's my thought on that. Uh, Medical gaslighting.
Mm. And it must be so difficult because, when they say, oh, you know your body best, but then you're being told for several years, no, it's not that. No, it's not that. No, it's not that. You start feeling dissociated from yourself. And I
Really?
guess that doesn't.
And not able to trust yourself.
Mm,
Like
mm,
really? And
it's
really,
true.
I think it's abusive. I think medical gaslighting is a form of emotional abuse,
Mm,
personally.
mm. Well, tell me a bit about some of the interventions that you've tried because you mentioned the app, and
Yeah.
I
Mm-hmm.
think it will be really helpful for our listeners and viewers to discuss how you found the app helpful, the mood trackers, and things like
Okay.
that. Because again, that kind of will help us lead into the discussion of medical gaslighting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, I use I used to use birth control.
Hmm.
But I no longer use that because and it worked good. It really did. Once it got in my system, it worked good because it cut my number of days from cramping and back aches and headaches and bleeding from
Mm,
7 days to like 3 to 4.
mm,
And then PMS and then PMDD don't last as long while you're taking birth control. But for
yeah.
my body and my composition, those hormones are a little too much because it makes me even more depressed
Right.
and it makes me even more anxious. So I cannot use birth control to help anymore.
Mm,
So I use the P tracker. That's what it's called on the iPhone.
mm-hmm,
So I'm not sure what it's called on an Android or anything like that, but it's called P Tracker. I've
mm-hmm.
been using this one for probably 7 or 8 years.
Yeah.
Um, and there's a calendar. You can add notes. You can track your mood. There are just so many things all packed in one that you can use. I use that. I also take a medicine. I think it's a mood stabilizer,
Mm-hmm,
but instead of taking it only during the weeks before and the week of, which is what one doctor had prescribed, my current physician said, hey, your cycle lasts for 7 days.
mm-hmm.
Your PMDD begins 10 days. That's 17 days out of the month. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm on an antidepressant um, once a day for the entire month for the purpose of PMDD because they're like 17 days. Like, let's go ahead and just take care of you. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. And is there any other interventions that haven't worked well? I know you mentioned the birth control doesn't work anymore, but was there anything else that you tried and didn't work at all, or anything that you have tried and still works really well?
Oh, um, I've done a lot of different meditations and tried yoga and tried Tai Chi.
Mm-hmm.
Um, those worked for a while,
Mm-hmm.
but it really, the physical component, like trying to clear my head and clear my space and just just love on my body in that way just to help with the anxiety, the insomnia, uh,
Mm-hmm.
the depression during PMDD, but the effects of those that they weren't long lasting. What does work is lavender works for me.
Okay.
So I grow fresh lavender, and we also have this huge lavender farm,
Hmm.
not far from where I live, and the owners just grow fields and fields of lavender.
Okay.
And what I do is I just make different oils.
Hmm.
I'll dry the lavender out. I'll put little lavender pouches in my pillows,
Hmm.
and it helps me to fall asleep faster.
Hmm.
And it helps me to relax and wake up more refreshed. So those things work as well.
Lovely, lovely.
Hmm.
We love a bit of naturalistic remedies,
Oh,
definitely.
yes, 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 yes. Yeah, my kids like going up to the lavender and rubbing it between their hands and going like this. I'm like, if you do that too many times, you're gonna be asleep.
But I think a lot of people really underestimate the power of herbs when it comes to their medicinal
Mhm.
properties. Um,
Oh yeah.
I can honestly say, particularly during the pandemic, for me, a lot of teas and brews I was making from herbs that I wouldn't usually use, but researching a lot and being able to make things that either help calm my body, my stomach, but also, like you said, the emotional side of it. So,
Mhm.
whether it is that you suffer with low level anxiety, certain different herbs and teas can help reduce those symptoms and signs from
Chamomile.
rearing their heads. Exactly. Chamomile,
Yeah.
there's loads. Catnip is another one.
Yep.
There's loads, there's loads. So yeah, I really appreciate you sharing homeopathic and naturalistic remedies as well, because not everyone
Yeah.
is pharmacologically suited. And
Mhm.
yeah, I appreciate you sharing that.
Oh yeah. I almost passed out at work one day. I made a garden for my students. So outside of the library, of course, what am I growing? Lavender, sage. I'm I'm growing all the herbs and stuff. So, and I'm like showing the kids like, don't pluck the lavender. Don't take the lavender. Just go
Mm,
up and rub it.
mhm,
Just gently rub it and then smell it.
mm,
Okay. So I demonstrated that to six different classes.
mhm.
So by the time I did this and was smelling lavender all day, my boss had to let me go home. I was I was in the library like, I don't know why I'm so sleepy. I don't know what's going on. And I was like, "Oh, I've been I've been smelling lavender all day."
Yeah.
True story. True story. I was lavender drunk at work, and my boss was on it. She was like, "Of course, go."
Yeah.
Yeah, I was lavender drunk. Yeah.
And obviously absorbing into your pores as well.
Yes, was not thinking. I was not thinking that day. Mm-mm.
Well, it's good that you was able to share the knowledge with students because again, having the ability and knowledge of the properties of herbs, or even just
Yeah.
alternative medicines, I would say,
Yeah.
is really helpful because not all physicians, or as we would say in the UK, general practitioners, they wouldn't always highlight that because of their professional expertise, which kind of leads me into my next question. You mentioned a phrase before, medical gaslighting, and I know when we was talking about a recent appointment that you had, um, I was just taken aback by your story, and without me spoiling it for the viewers and the listeners, um, would you like to share your experience with your most recent appointment?
Sure. Um, so my family, my grandmother and grandfather, they had 12 children, and my mom was one of the 12. And I think all but one of the girls, there were six girls and six boys, they've
Mm,
all had hysterectomy.
mm,
Like, there are some reproductive issues in the family,
mm,
okay? Long, long cycles, heavy bleeding, cramping, vomiting with your cycle,
mm,
headaches, I mean, backaches. I mean, it just is horrible.
mm.
Um, could you ask me that question again?
Yeah, it was just your experience of the professional gaslighting at your
Yeah,
recent
yeah, yeah.
appointment.
So I was explaining to this doctor, it was my first time meeting her. I
Mm-hmm,
was her new patient, and I was explaining to her that little bit and about my familiar background and how
mm-hmm,
my grandmother had passed away from ovarian cancer. My mom, she was only 26 when she had to have a full hysterectomy 2 days after I was born. So I'm
mm,
giving her, all of this information because, I'm her new patient.
mm,
And um, she interrupts me several times while I'm talking. I don't need to know any of that. That's not why we're here. You said you're here because your lady parts are hurting. So I'm thinking, oh, here we go. All right. So I said, yes, but it's more than that. I said, I have a tracker on my phone
mm,
where I rate my pain, what's going on. I mean, I have almost 8 years of data right here on the phone.
mm, mm,
Can I share this with you? Because these cramps, like I can't. Something is wrong.
mm,
Something is wrong. I can this lower back pain and the cramps when I cramp. I said the pain shoots down the front of my leg
mm,
and it doesn't stop. The pain doesn't get lighter as the week progresses. No, I'm walking around with pain patches and all types of stuff. All that. Oh no no no. You know what? You said your back is hurting too. Um, that doesn't sound like a lady part problem, Miss Owens. That to me sounds like you need physical therapy.
oh, gosh.
I was, uh, I said, okay, so all right. I I said so with my familiar history, family history, my the way I'm presenting now to you.
Mm,
Okay. I have data on my phone. I said, and you just told me it's not my lady parts because I'm feeling them. I said, the parts are on me. I
mm,
said,
mm,
so you're telling me I'm not feeling what I'm feeling?
mm.
Couldn't be, couldn't be. I said, so you've made your diagnosis in the first 5 minutes and you've interrupted me 7 times.
Hmm.
Well, if you want me to do an exam, I'll do an exam. Yeah. And then she asked about my weight, which is what happens a lot to women
Mhm.
and especially black women. When
Mhm.
we are being gaslit in a medical setting, they
Mm.
love to talk about our weight.
Mhm.
They like to paint us as lazy
Mhm.
and ask us about our weight, talk about all the things that we are not even there presenting about. And with her, I expressed to her how displeased I was with the appointment.
Mm.
She kept telling me she only has 20 minutes. And she's not here to answer all of these other questions that I had. And she can give me a recommendation for physical therapy, but I don't need to come back and see her again because she can't do anything for me. Yeah.
It's awful. It is awful. And particularly where you're in such a vulnerable state and you've gone to a professional for support, you would expect them to, at the very least, listen. Listen
And
to
I
the.
was on my way to the emergency room,
Mm,
and the nurse had called from because I was going straight to the emergency room. The nurse called from her office, and she's like, "Hey, I got your message. How are things going?" I'm like, "I'm on my way to the ER because I cannot do this. I can't concentrate. I can't hold anything down. I can't, I can't right now.
mm,
Come into the office." So I went into the office for no reason at all, just to be invalidated.
mm. And it happens so much, like you said, particularly with Black women, the misdiagnosis, the loss of voice, in all honesty, like
Yes.
feeling like you have to take their voice away or our voices away.
Hmm.
At the fact of being in a position of power, it's so demeaning to say the least. And it happens
Yes.
time and time and time again. I was reading a study um, that highlighted the four stages of a process, and women were talking about going through this experience as a battlefield and it feeling
Hmm.
like war. And they expressed like the first stage feeling like a broken woman, where they're battling with the inner war within themselves and feeling like they've been snapped into two. And then
Mm.
they mentioned about what we said before about the long length of diagnosis. So whether it is 10 years, 12 years, 15 years to get a diagnosis, being misjudged and feeling unheard.
Mm.
And then getting to the point where you are out of tracking, finding alternatives that you're able to support yourself. So switching up the narrative, so to speak, and changing treatment patterns, and then it finally getting to a point of balance where you mentioned in the beginning, and
Hmm.
it now being like a negotiation of not only picking up the pieces of the previous
Hmm.
10 to 15 years, but also navigating a new life, and
Hmm.
new battlefields, so to speak. Does any of that resonate with you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because now, now that I know what's going on, I feel like I'm partly responsible for educating other people about it
Mm.
because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And some things like the difference between PMS and PMDD
Mm.
could mean a world of difference of how someone is going to handle their next job interview. You,
Yes.
that might change someone's mind about how they negotiate their salary. They
Yeah.
might negotiate for more paid time off or for more sick days and, for a lesser salary because they already know that, hey, sometimes it's PMDD,
Mm.
it's
Mm.
going to be PMDD,
Mm. Mm.
and I might need to negotiate for extra sick time or PTO time up front. I don't need to
Yeah.
tell them why. They don't need to know why,
Yeah.
but maybe it's worth a try.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's important.
And it's so important to have the autonomy to be able to ask and negotiate these things. And something that we spoke about before was that I'm noticing a lot of workplaces implementing menopause friendly schemes or policies,
Mm.
or even just hormonal change policies to be inclusive
Wow.
of, you know, people that don't identify as women or men that also go through hormonal changes as well. So I think what
Yes.
you're saying is very valid. And it not only goes down to, like, you know, salary or pay, but uniform, for example. People that work in a uniform, whether they're you wearing light clothes, workplaces are even considering the absorption rate of the material of uniforms and things like that. So
Hmm.
it's very, very important that more information and education is spread. And whilst I wouldn't say don't put the weight on yourself as someone that's experienced it, but we do need to hear from people like yourself and Black women that experience these types of issues as well, because there is such a stigma within Black communities about accessing mental health, but also just being a Black woman asking for help is an issue
Yeah.
within itself,
Yeah.
especially when
It
it's
is.
related to the very thing, you know, that many of us relate to being a woman, is our menstruation, our menopausal changes and things like that. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh
man.
yeah.
So can you tell me a bit about how PMDD may have affected your working life or family life even?
Oh yeah. Um, there have been mornings when I've been on my way to work and gotten sick in the car.
Mm,
Um, so I've missed work because I've either gotten sick or either couldn't drive for some reason. So like when I get a really bad migraine, um, or if my blood pressure goes up too high,
mm-hmm,
I get these vision changes.
mm-hmm,
So I've missed work, and sometimes when I miss work, I would get behind schedule with my students because it's really
mm,
hard to plan when you're in the library. Although I taught every kid, I would see every kid in the building for 45 minutes once a week.
mm-hmm,
But if I was out and I had a different lesson planned for the
mm,
next week, I would
mm,
have to go back, reteach. So I mean, a lot of things were affected when I was out of work
mm,
because, I mean, it's reteaching, restructuring, reteaching things that didn't get taught when I was out.
mm-hmm,
So family, oh yes, from needing more sleep, more rest,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
and not being able to get it.
mm,
Excuse me, that was hard in the beginning. Trying to find the balance of like, when do you take care of yourself? Because if yourself is not healthy, how can you
mm,
take care of other people? Um,
exactly.
so I got to the point where I was like, you know what, I need to do everything I can to take care of me
Mm-hmm,
so that the little people, when they want to stay an extra 30 minutes at the park or, an extra 30 minutes at the skating rink or at the bowling alley,
mm-hmm,
it's not so frustrating. It's not
yeah,
such a big deal. You know what? It's not a big deal. You know,
yeah,
30
yeah,
minutes. It's not a big deal. Yeah. So I've with the therapy and with um homeopathic solutions I have at home,
mm-hmm,
prescription meds, family and friends are now very supportive because they're educated. They
mm,
know. Yeah. So,
yeah. That's beautiful because it's very important to have a supportive and thriving ecosystem, I guess. Um,
mm,
and it sounds like you've really created that for yourself. And I really hope that
very
anyone that,
careful.
yeah, definitely. And I hope anyone that is listening to this really takes heed of the things that you've mentioned, because it can be difficult to create something like that when you don't have the footing of information that you've had. So, what advice would you give people that do experience PMDD, that they can go back to their friends and their family or their workplaces? How can they ask for support?
I would um, first make sure that, when you look in the mirror and you say what you're going to say to someone else
Mm,
about what you're feeling and how you're feeling, make sure you're okay hearing it too.
mm,
It Things are different when you're saying them,
mm,
but are you going to cringe if you hear yourself say those words? Are you going
mm,
to cringe if someone says, "Hey, I heard her say this. I heard him. I heard they. I heard them say that."
mm,
Be totally okay with your story
mm,
before you share it. Be okay with it because it's going to get retold. That's the first piece of advice I would give.
it's wonderful bit of advice.
Yeah, yeah, because it's going to be retold.
Hmm. And what's the next piece you're gonna say?
I would say the next piece of advice would just go with the flow. Just go
Mm,
with the flow. Follow your heart, go with the flow, and set gentle, intentional boundaries with yourself. Don't be really hard on yourself.
mm,
You've got to love yourself the same way you want somebody to love you, and the same way you loving on somebody else. And
mm.
that's all to say.
Lovely, lovely. And I think one last piece of advice that would be helpful, particularly for the Black women that are watching this show, in respect of the professional or medical gaslighting, what advice would you give to them?
Keep a record. Any way that you're most comfortable keeping records about your interactions um, with the physician or physicians that you're seeing.
Hmm.
And if you think that you have experienced medical gaslighting, which is, I mean, I personally think that it's a form of emotional abuse. I
Hmm.
do. I
Hmm.
do. That's exactly what I think it is. And if you think that you're a victim of that, keep notes,
Mm.
keep your prescriptions, get your medical records, um, get second and third opinions,
Hmm.
document everything. And oh my gosh, grab a screenshot of something
Yes.
because I made a mistake and I was, just simply using the system, the internal system, to go back and forth and communicate with one particular physician. And then they switched systems.
Okay.
And all of the communication. Oh, it was a system failure. Nah, baby.
Oh
No.
gosh.
I know about technology. If you wanted to keep that, if you wanted to keep those conversations for record keeping, baby,
Hmm.
you have plenty of people around you. So many somebody on Twitter right now could go in your organization and fix that and make it work. If you wanted to keep those conversations and that data, you would have kept that data.
That is so
I
true.
I lost every conversation I had with the doctor. So
Gosh.
now I'm just like, if I tell Siri to take a screenshot, I'll pick up my cell phone and
Mm,
take a picture. I mean,
mhm.
I'll do something because I cannot depend on their internal systems anymore.
Yeah.
Like, Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I would say do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just keep your records. And if you're ready and prepared to do something different, don't tell nobody what you're doing.
Mm,
If you want to take it to another step, do not tell the physician. Don't tell your sister and them. Don't tell your cousins. Don't tell nobody what moves you are making. Keep it between you and your lawyer if you want
mm.
to go that route, and then go that route. But make sure you have all of this documentation I'm telling you about. Yeah.
Yeah. 1,000% agree. 1,000% agree. And Black mental health matters is all about self liberation of and within the Black communities. And I think self education and advocacy, which is obviously what you're kind of referring to here, is being able
Hmm.
to move through these systems that, work against us a lot of the time. So,
Hmm.
great advice that you've given, Brandon. Thank you. And an amazing, informative discussion with you. So, I think we're going to wrap things up here. And I would love for you to tell everyone where they can find you or get more information about yourself and the things that you do, because I'm sure you'll likely get a lot of people reaching out to you following this discussion, even if it's to have a mutual listening ear, or whether, some sort of coaching or mental health advocacy. Where can people find you to reach out or get support?
I had someone to actually hack my Facebook account. So I had an active Facebook account from like 2004 up until this past December.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm Brandlyn B. Owens on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
And I did run a mental health advocacy page called the Mental Health Burrito.
Okay.
Um, but that was under the account, which I no longer have access to,
Right.
my original Facebook account. Oh my gosh, creating a new Facebook account. This is for the birds. It's so childish. I can't believe I have to do this. Like I lost everything.
Yep.
But I'm on Instagram, Brandlyn Owens. I'm on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
I volunteer, and I'm an active member of NAMI Durham, the National Alliance on Mental Health.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I have a few things coming up, podcast interviews. I'm on Clubhouse sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Reach out to me anywhere, Instagram, Facebook. I'm going to try and revamp my blog, but took a lot of work to build up that page and
Mm-hmm.
my following. So reach out anytime. I'm here for you. Um, and I look forward to meeting you.
Lovely, lovely, lovely. And I really do hope you get your access back to your accounts, or you start up a new
Yeah,
account, because yeah, you're bringing well needed knowledge to the world. Not only from a professional, but someone with lived experience. And a lot of the time that's
yeah.
more valuable to someone going through something than, like what we said before, a clinical definition or looking on
Mhm.
Google. Um,
Yeah.
so thank you so much for your time. This is Rihanna from Black Mental Health Matters. Thanking you all for listening, watching. Like I said at the beginning, please like, share, and subscribe where you can. Go and follow Brandolyn and get as much information as possible from her. Um, yeah, it's been a very, very informative show. Anyone that is experiencing PMDD or PMS, please go and do some research. Take the tips from Brandolyn, review the show if you have to, and get your notebook out and take some notes. But yeah, thank you very much for listening and have a beautiful and blessed day. Take care.
Bye bye.